Hi everyone. Angela, could I please share my screen now? Wonderful. And of course, in the spirit of all online meetings, can everyone see my screen? Wonderful. Fantastic. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Khanyi Mpumlwana. I am a member of the advisory board of the Research Collective. For housekeeping, here are a few things you need to know. This meeting is being recorded, so please let us know if this is something you're not comfortable with. If not, please make sure that your camera is off. It will also be saved onto the website for later viewing if you're unable to join us at this time, or if you just want to watch it again. Another thing is that we are a nonprofit organization, and so to help us continue our work, we're also asking for any donations or contributions that you can make. You can donate using the QR code or on the RCDF website. Great. So it's quite an honor to be able to have this conversation with you all. I think that I'd like us all to see this as a movie night between friends and not me just presenting a bunch of films. So if you have any feelings or reflections that you want to share almost immediately after you've seen something, please just drop a note in the chat so I can be made aware of it, and feel free to say anything, really. I don't really like the sound of my own voice, so the more of us speaking, the better, I think would be great. So I think having been lucky enough to kind of view these films prior to today's session, I did think it would be quite apt to share a little bit of an excerpt from Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, which I think encapsulates the spirit of all of these films quite well. And it says, and so our mothers and grandmothers have, more often than not anonymously, handed on the creative spark, the seed of the flower they themselves never hoped to see, or like a sealed letter they could not plainly read. Yet so many of the stories that I write, that we all write, are my mother's stories. And the reason I'm sharing this excerpt is because I think that something that had me reflecting after watching all of these films is that there are stories that were and were not told in our past, in our collective memories, and ambitions that were unrealized. And I think I feel a sense of joy and excitement when I watch these films, because there's a little bit of an unearthing that is happening. There's a little bit of like a zeitgeist, a rumbling in the ground that excites me, and people are kind of unearthing and figuring out what's happening. And, you know, until we kind of find something that's snug and fits us in terms of exploring our identities and how we fit into the world. And, you know, it's work that we have to do, and it's work that has already started happening, as you'll see in these films. And it's a work of kind of looking to answer ourselves by questioning those that have come before us. And it's not a questioning that is very critical or, you know, kind of negative. It's a questioning that is, why did this exist? How were we making in the past, and how can we make for our own futures? And I think, you know, as you kind of watch these films, it's something that I'd like you to kind of remember, that, you know, we have these rituals of making and storytelling, and it's kind of a process of revival for us. Like, we're not really sure where this is all going to end up in our storytelling. This is a process of exploring and a process of finding ourselves. I'd like to ask that we all mute, just because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback and I'm not sure where it's coming from. So yes, so this theme, I think, is something that's quite adamantly threading itself throughout these films, and I hope that you're just as excited about them as I am. Our first film is episode 1 of a series called The Invisibility of Black Fashion Professionals at the City of Sao Paulo, Brazil. It's a project by Paloma, Gervasio, Botelho. This work interviews 12 Black professionals and students in the market with varied skills, such as image and style consulting, image construction, education, entrepreneurship, styling, photography, journalism, performance, and research, and so much more. These specialists kind of all have one thing in common. They are all unknown names in the mainstream and tackle racism in their study and work environments. And I think representation is a topic that has come up so much in this industry, and this film does a very great job of looking at what that representation could look like. And so here we go.
Na minha primeira formação também não foi uma coisa assim, não foi uma experiência legal que eu tive. Ali eu já sentia o impacto e certa resistência com a minha pessoa por conta da minha origem, por conta de ser pobre, por conta de ser mulher, de ser preta, né? E assim, partia principalmente dos professores, assim, sempre duvidando. Ai, mas nossa, aí você fez tal trabalho, nossa, mas você comprou? E por conta desse destaque, a minha turma, assim, na faculdade vem me excluindo. Eu sinto uma certa resistência com a minha pessoa. Quando eu manifesto a minha opinião em sala, eu percebo olhares de gente fazendo careta, ou tem gente que fala, olha com aquela cara tipo, ai, lá vem a neguinha de novo falando de gente preta. E assim, é pra ser uma coisa assim, tão normal, tão natural, porque assim, a gente está no Brasil, mais da metade da população é preta. O fato de fazer sucesso, de fazer bons trabalhos incomoda, e não incomoda por qualquer coisa, incomoda porque eu sou preta e porque eu sou da periferia, né, eu sou mulher. Então assim, as pessoas não estão habituadas, o Jay-Z e a Beyoncé, eles podem prosperar à vontade, ter o destaque que for. Mas eu que estou aqui, que estou perto, que sou uma pessoa que é alcançável, gera desconforto nas pessoas.
A primeira vez que eu desfilei na Casa de Criadores foi para o Fernando Cozendei, que já vinha de um histórico de fazer desfiles com outras corporeidades dentro da casa. E aí quando eu cheguei em São Paulo, o primeiro estilista negro que me pegou na chincha falou assim, vamos aqui, vamos fazer um bafo juntos, foi o Isaac Silva. Isso há pouco tempo, né? Eu estou há 3 anos aqui. E agora, assim, né, sei lá, no último 1 ano e meio para cá, ou 1 ano, que eu vejo agora outras performatividades de corpos negros dentro da passarela. Eu fiz da última vez na Casa de Criadores 3 desfiles. E aí depois eu fui olhar, assim, né, na timeline do Instagram, eu tinha postado os 3 desfiles, falei, olha, que bafo, porque tem aí 3 possibilidades de muitas, que nós, todas, pessoas negras, podemos apresentar como imagem, como estética. E isso vem porque a gente está, desde 2013, que para mim é um marco bastante importante, imagino para todo mundo, historicamente, né? A gente vem empurrando a porta para que mais pessoas possam entrar e para que mais pessoas possam falar, que mais pessoas possam apresentar suas ideias.
Comecei com esse trabalho através de um incômodo dentro das pesquisas que eu comecei a fazer, e na época, em 2012 para 2013, não havia nada de referência de estilo dentro de uma vestimenta adequada para certas ocasiões. Já cheguei a pensar em parar várias vezes e hoje em dia eu retomei com muito mais força dentro do que eu estudo cada vez mais, trago mais enriquecimento de conhecimento mesmo, né? Trazendo essas novidades, e cada vez mais está tendo profissionais, mulheres negras, isso é muito bom, que também trazem o olhar delas para esse mundo da moda. A problemática que eu vejo desde a época que eu comecei é de não ter essa referência. A gente não tem. Hoje que tem um pouquinho mais de uma com outra profissional, mas quando vai em eventos grandes não tem alguém que tem essa referência como consultoria de imagem. Tá? Fala-se muito de moda, mas da consultoria de imagem e estilo em si não tem uma referência de mulher negra que esteja lá no palco para poder falar sobre isso.
Não sei se todo esse movimento do povo negro tendo essa atitude, né, de se colocar, de buscar se expressar cada vez mais, está fazendo com que exista uma abertura maior, mas isso não foi sempre, né? Tem 30 anos de profissão E muitas vezes eu procurei, assim, em alguns lugares e foram poucos. Como cabeleireiro, eu era uma pessoa muito de cuidar do outro, né, de ouvir o outro. Eu acho que isso, de alguma forma, foi abrindo espaço, as pessoas me entendiam como uma pessoa generosa, e durante muito tempo eu achei que isso fosse uma coisa muito positiva para mim, né? Depois de um tempo eu comecei a refletir que, na real, acho que esse lugar aí é um lugar muito de submissão, né? De você tá repetindo padrões, né? Do negro na sociedade, sempre cuidando do outro, no papel de serviçal.
O futuro que eu penso, que eu quero que aconteça, é isso, de uma menina assim como eu, chegar ter esse seu embasamento, mas chegar numa universidade ou no mercado de trabalho e não ter que se desdobrar ou ter que doutrinar as pessoas a seu respeito, principalmente trabalhar, sabe? Não ter que provar 20 mil vezes que ela é capaz daquilo ou ser analisada o tempo todo sobre será que vai, será que não vai? Que você possa naturalmente falar e fazer sobre as coisas que você gostaria de ser. Eu tenho uma amiga, a Aline Ramos, que ela fala assim, eu quero ser fútil, sabe, eu quero falar sobre o batom, o último lançamento da fulana de tal, sabe, eu quero sentar na mesa do boteco e falar, sei lá, sobre qualquer outra coisa banal, sem ter que ter sempre a preocupação de estar doutrinando as pessoas.
Como mulher negra, trabalhando dentro da moda, né? Mesmo dentro da indústria ou como na academia, né? É um desafio, porque você se vê naquele papel de que você tem que ser melhor sempre, você tem que saber tudo, que você não pode errar. Já sofri vários processos complicados, já pensei muitas vezes em desistir da moda, porque você sempre é olhado para estar num cargo operacional. Mas eu vejo que hoje, com 17 anos dentro da moda, eu não precisaria estar fazendo coisas que eu vejo que pessoas que trabalham 1, 2 anos já não estão mais fazendo operacional, né? Você pode estar num papel de decisão, de tomada de decisão, só que a sua palavra ela não vale exatamente porque você é uma mulher negra. Estar na moda hoje e gostando de fazer o que eu faço é um processo de resistência. Existem 2 caminhos para empreender, ou você empreende por necessidade ou por oportunidade. E eu vejo que hoje, né, muitos profissionais negros dentro da indústria da moda já estão empreendendo por oportunidade, não só por necessidade. Então, acho que isso me deixa muito feliz, assim, de poder estar junto dessas pessoas.
Thank you for that. We're just going to stop sharing for 2 seconds so I can add episode 2. Give me a minute, please. Thank you. All right, reminder for everyone again, we are recording. I'm going to share episode 2 of this wonderful series. Thank you for your patience.
Eu trabalhei com assessoria política durante 15 anos e faz 2 anos, exatamente, que eu falei chega, e foi que eu lancei um blog, que é crisguterres.com.br, que é um blog que fala de tudo, de lifestyle, mas principalmente um protagonismo negro, que é o que eu gosto na moda. Essa moda que é a moda afro-brasileira e também é a moda que negros buscam e formam para si mesmo, né? A gente já produzia nossas roupas, nossa vestimenta, desde a época das senzalas. Isso tudo tem que ser, tem que entrar historicamente. Acho legal das pessoas também pensarem o que vem primeiro, é a moda ou a identidade? Quando a moda vem na frente do afro, a gente desconstrói muito da nossa identidade, né? De repente é afromoda brasileira. Se nós não somos aceitos lá, nós vamos fazer o nosso evento. É claro, a gente tem muita dificuldade porque a gente precisa de dinheiro. Então, vale a gente fazer por nós mesmos, mas a gente...
Apologies, everyone. It seems the version that we have does not have subtitles. Do we by any chance have a copy with subtitles?
Yeah, I should ask Paloma because ideally it should have. So Paloma, are you still here with us?
Yes.
Do you know how we can enable the subtitle on the second episode? Do you upload it on the...
Yes, this is downloaded.
Yes, it is.
It's not from the YouTube. Probably if you downloaded the subtitle, the file of subtitle.
I will speak in Portuguese just to get the things fast. O que ela está passando é o segundo episódio do que você colocou na pasta. Será que se ela só colocar para aparecer, não aparece os subtítulos?
Sim, não, tem que ter o arquivo.
Mas não é aquele arquivo que você colocou na pasta?
Sim, coloquei o episódio e o arquivo. Aí na hora de pedir na hora de colocar, ele vai provavelmente pedir o arquivo. E aí entra a legenda.
Okay, now we figure out. So when you download it from the file, you need to add the subtitles, and then they're gonna together match the subtitle with the the transcribed file with the thing. So if you go here, the RCDF or episode 2, you need to match both files. Is that correct, Paloma?
Sim.
Okay. And then okay, go ahead.
You are saying I need to add this to what exactly? Thanks again, everyone.
Eu já passo.
Great, hi. Okay. So I think the previous film about representation is one that it's a conversation that has been had and keeps getting had around Black creators in the industry. What does representation look like? What are the barriers to entry when it comes to representation? And I think it's hard to talk about identity in race without kind of addressing the many intersections through which our clothing even forms part of the structures of coloniality. And so our next film, The Cutting Room Project by Lesiba Mabitsela, is a response to Ilze Wolff's Unstitching Rex True Form. It's an analysis of class, race, and gender in the 20th century South Africa via the modernist architecture of the Rex True Form garment manufacturing factory in Salt River, Cape Town. So through a series of videos, garments, and an interactive storyboard, Mabitsela explores how the three-piece suit in both design and symbolism addresses many of the same entanglements that Wolff's research identified in the construction of the Rex True Form building. The project critiques both the making and wearing of dress and the physical site of production, drawing together fashion theory, performance theory, and architecture.
From ever, don't you know each cloud contains pennies from ever? You find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. They will come and we'll have everything. We'll share the joy, falling in love can break. No one can tell me that I'm too young to know. I love you so, and you love me. They will come if we just wait a while. No tears for us. Think, laugh, and wear a smile. Our dreams of magic because we'll always stay in love this way. Our day will come. Oh, our day will come. falling in love can break. No one can tell me that I'm too young to know. I love you so, and you love me.
So as we kind of think about the various aspects of Black identity and the effects of coloniality on Black identity in the past as well as today, I think our next film is quite something, because it reminds me of a conversation I once had with a curator on the politics of simply just owning a piece of art, and what that means and has meant for Black people. You know, a lot of Black South Africans in particular, then and now, kind of did what you could to express yourself, whether it was through your clothing or through art, and to make home. And of course, because the art world has always kind of been a little bit out of reach, people kind of collected what they could, from, you know, those porcelain dolls that we all know, that to ornamental doily mats that used to sit on our dining tables. Those were the kind of ties that bound us and our desires to express and make home with what we had. And so this project is about one of the interesting art pieces that hung in many Black South African households in the 1970s and 80s. It was a photograph of a mother and child. My mom had one in her house too. Spree and South African clothing brand Butan search for the mystery photographer and subjects behind the popular household portrait. Their search opens up a myriad of conversations that reflect the complexities of race, politics, and class, forming an oral history of domestic and social life in the latter half of the apartheid era. This provocative film is an intimate look into the homes and hearts of Black South African families, creating an emotional narrative of love and resistance. And I would love to show it to you. There we go. Searching for mother and child.
Growing up, that picture was always there. Like, it didn't matter what house you went to, whether you grew up in the suburbs or you grew up in the townships. I feel if you're a certain age and if you're Black, that picture's like a mainstay in your memory bank in your childhood.
It's just one of those pictures where when you see, you just kind of had that nostalgic feeling of back home. You know, it was kind of part of the fabric of South African. It's almost like, you know how people describe the Americana phase? It's very South Africana, you know, if I had to put it that way. You know, like it just takes me back to the very things that make us South African.
I grew up Koduwe, Soweto, and all my relatives, a lot of my relatives were in and around. And I don't recall when I first saw this picture. I don't remember my mom bringing it home, but it almost seems like it was just a part of the family that was just always there.
We grew up in, you know, face brick houses. Everything was pretty much like, you know, families almost had the same kind of template in all their houses. If it wasn't the picture of the mother and the daughter, it would be the picture of the crying boy, you know, the porcelain dogs and whatnot. So like everything was pretty much the same.
Yeah, first time I saw the picture was either at my grand's or at home with my mom and dad, or at my one aunt's house. It kind of brings back that, you know, if I had to sum it up to one sentence, I'd say like, it kind of brings up a sense of nostalgia at a certain point in time.
I think so. There's so many people who hold in this picture just from their childhood.
When I see this picture like this, I have a photo with my father holding me like this. When I see it, it makes me to remind that thing.
Yes, man. I never thought I'd show this picture again. Yes. This is motherly love in its abundance.
My mom kind of looks like that mom, you know, to the point where I honestly thought that was like my mom and my sister for the longest time. And I think I'm not even alone. I think for a lot of Black kids growing up, you thought that there was someone in your family, you know, it could have been your mother, it could have been your aunt, but it's one of those, I don't really know how to put it, man. It's just,
I don't know, it's one of those pictures that like before you go to sleep, you kind of focus on it when you like, you know, when you pass out. So for the longest time, I thought maybe it's a family member, maybe it's, I don't know, like it just looked like somebody who I kind of identified to.
You know, it's like, as much as mother and child's not South African, I think South Africans have taken ownership of it.
Also, I feel like the significance of it lies where it's like the epitome of what like the black mother and child should be versus what black mother and child was in the country at that time. It was nothing like that, but every black person kind of aspired to have that.
At the time when that picture came out, we're talking 60s, 70s, 80s. It's in apartheid. Black people are being oppressed. When you look at mother and child, there's just something very serene about it. There's something very powerful about it as well. What does it say at the top? Our mothers is very special. You know, I think that's what it says. That in itself is like, it reaffirms the image. It's positive.
This picture it reminds me so many things. If I see this picture, I remember my mother, because my mother now is passed away. When I see this picture, I remember everything my mom has done for me.
I think the picture says innocence. I think that's what the picture says. I think every black kid and every black mother, I think, resonates with them because we all got carried. Whether it's in the back or it's in the front, but we all got carried.
So I wonder where the origins could have come from, you know, really. Like, I mean, this may have just been something that was maybe on a magazine and somebody kind of just framed it. We don't know. I mean,
I don't get it. And it's before the time of social media, not too much TV, you know, but it was just a thing.
Everyone can connect and resonate with it. Everyone relates to this. Everyone's got their own little story about this picture. That's crazy, you know? I mean, I'd love to find out, like, who's the person who was actually behind this, you know? Are they still alive? Like, do they even know how iconic their picture was?
I want to know who they are. I want to know their story. I want to know, how did we get this picture? I'd love to know who they are.
So the thing about kind of taking that piece of art that was in our homes and kind of archiving it in the form of something that we wear every day is quite meaningful in that you know, it's kind of like making meaning as an archival practice and as a revolutionary act. Like in the face of, you know, kind of oppression, there was this image that people look to for a little bit of hope, a little bit of joy, a little bit of love, and to take that and kind of reimagine it and to kind of allow it to live beyond the time that it existed through our clothing, I think is quite magical. And, you know, our next three films kind of tell a little bit more story about making as an archival practice, you know, taking things that were considered part of the past and making sure that they can live in the future. How do we ensure that the crafts that were perfected before us live and evolve through us? And I think all three of them kind of touch on weaving as the archival practice. And the first is Weave.The Preamble by Mustafa Mohsin in collaboration with Sonya Battla. And the second is two clips about the RANGSA Ni TONUN film. The first covers the creative process of the film. The second dives into the making of the theme song. That film in particular was created as a means of translating a 19th century text of the same name into a visual medium. The text, which centers around Batak weaving procedures, combines descriptions of day-to-day life with reference to legends and origin myths, and was originally part of the oral repertory of a Batak guru or a knowledge specialist known as a Datu. And so I will play all of them in succession. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, got my notes mixed up there. And here's the first one, Weave the Preamble.
feeling very indigo. And you know, when we did the tie and dye, it was a real hit, so we can take that further.
Yeah, and since, you know, it was hand dyed, I think if the fabric is also hand woven, it will add value to it.
And ikat is lost, you know, even in India and Bangladesh.
Yeah, we should really revive that.
Should revive ikat, and I don't think I think some of these weavers can make them because they're all from the old block.
Yes.
Before that generation is lost, we should ask the weavers. So maybe we need to coordinate it, tie-dye the yarn.
Yes.
And not just work on the fabric this time. What do you think?
I think, yeah, we should experiment with the yarn in different ways because there's a lot that we can do. And that's a really great idea to start with tie-dye and enforce some ikat in that.
I'm feeling very blue for some reason. Do you think we should stick to blue or should we?
I think let's just start with blue and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, that's us as a starting point. Use, you know, this old reference of ours that was really successful. Do you think we'll be able to find skilled workers for ikat?
I think we'll really have to find some craft-oriented babas in that locality who actually value this craft. There are a lot of weavers that are doing that, but see, the craft has already died.
Yeah, and in fact, ikat was never made in Pakistan.
Exactly, you don't find ikat anywhere. Nobody's doing anything. You just find it in prints. You know, mostly people are using it in digital prints. I think that's how people know what ikat is, but they don't exactly know the feel of it. They don't really know
that
the
it's
value.
still done in Orissa in India and in
Bangladesh,
but not in Pakistan. It's never been done here. So actually, it's about a revival. I think it's more about the introduction of ikat, and you know, which is a huge sort of find.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I'm sure there must be hardly very few weavers who would know what ikat is.
Yeah.
So once we start, it will be a great idea. So this craft could also pass from generation to generation, and
you know,
let's hope that it doesn't die.
ये करीबन मेरे ये काम करते हुए 30 से 40 साल हो गए। अपने हाथ का सनत है, अपने हाथ का रोजी रोजगार है, इसमें किसी की मोहताजगी नहीं है। ये हुनर हमारे एक खानदानी बेस पे चलता है। हमारे बड़े भाई थे, उनके हाथ से हमने सीखा। एक ये कपड़े जो होते हैं ना, ये बिल्कुल हटके हैं। इनका नाम होता है बनारसी कपड़े के नाम से मशहूर है। बस बात ये है कि बारीक कपड़ा है, कॉटन का बनता है, ये टेक्निक से बनता है और खड्डी पे बनता है ये कपड़ा।
I think let's do tie-dye with hand weave, and you know, it could be indigo linked with hand weave.
It could be a weave with indigo infusion.
Yeah, let's name that.
So we select indigo as a main.
Yes.
And infuse indigo as a narrative for this collection.
I think that will be a great start. Yeah. And it will also be an inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. What old indigo stands for, the test of time. I'll start with the blue and see where it goes, but dabble in ikat a little bit. I'll just write that down. So let's see if we can make ikat.
Hi everybody, I'm Sandra Niessen. Hi everybody, I'm Sandra Niessen, anthropologist, and I'm sorry I can't join you this evening. I hope you enjoyed the 2 trailers for the film RANGSA NI TONUN. We made the film about 10 years ago, and in fact I started the text. The text is a piece written by a magical specialist or a literary specialist of the Batak people of North Sumatra in Indonesia. He wrote it down in 1872, and I found out about it in 1980 and was very excited because it's so rare to find a piece about the weaving arts. And I took the piece back to North Sumatra and hunted for people who could help me translate it. And that was a really difficult task because the language was esoteric. It was something that specialists in magical language knew, and they did it to awe their audiences. It would be something that he would enunciate before an audience. And because it was written in 1872, you can imagine that the audiences then knew exactly what he was talking about. But the weaving arts have really changed since then. And hi, everybody. I'm Sandra Niessen, anthropologist, and I'm sorry I can't join you this evening. I hope you enjoyed the 2 trailers.
Seems Sandra's video is a bit glitchy, so I'll play it again after her 2 films.
nasongon panggiunan tung dialiton ma nasongon tali papau tung di si tunjang ma songon si saduan nah ditopak di dompak kon ma pagabe di tundalhon ma pamunggung di sitak magiuna di asoan
disuruh kondo panopuna.
Jadi
asa tung disita ma asongon pergiunan. Tung ditujang ma sitadoana didopakkon ma pagabe. Ditudalho ma pamunggung. Disitak ma giuna. Diaso-asohon ma balobasna. Ditobop ma baligana. disurukon ma turakna. Asa didaison ma pa nosana.
Asa imada raksa ni patonunan ni siboro hasagian. Sian ipa ni lautan. Na jumadion ulos ni si raja ihat manusia.
Asa imada raksa ni patonunan ni siboro hasagian. Sian ipar ni lautan. Najumarion ulos ni si raja ihat manusia.
Medeko, tuka mertebung galingan, damat jalo sabe na, songo bitang nauli, anak baru pangeran ngedai to, ima, bisa ini, saling bisa, bayar salam sih, olo. Tuka mertebung galingan, damat jalo sabe na, songo bitang nauli, anak baru
Pangeran Inam.
Bisa ini, saling bisa, bayar salam sih, olo. Saga-saga hudungin nama gudakku rame-rame na, anak ni namorain na pagudakku alele na, berita ni si boru na partonun na utusan, iti bibir bogasin na hola pa mutusan. Iyang go hududin na ito rubi malap borongan, ang ko songokoy dakku padang agedongan. Ima, biate.
Ninna iran-iranon.
Tuka mertebung galingan, damat jalo sabe na, songo bitang nauli, anak baru pangeran ngedai.
Tukap martunggalingan damanjalo sabe-sabena songon bintang nauli anak baru pangiranginan.
I highly encourage you to watch the full film. It is quite an experience. So now that we've reflected a little bit on, the crafts of the past and finding ways to preserve and archive them, I think our final film is quite a great introduction to conversations about the future and what 5 years from now, 10 years from now looks like, and how we want to kind of weave the various aspects of our identity and sense of and everything that we've learned from the past and learned about ourselves in the present and applying it to our futures. And the film is called I Am Motherland, and it's created in collaboration with filmmaker Daniel van Houten along with Branko Popovic. It is about Kalkidan Hooks, who was adopted from Ethiopia and raised in the Netherlands. She's a designer who has always felt that she lived in between two different worlds. She explores the intricacies of her identity and relates to others through her jewelry, speaking to those she considers part of her identity, youth of mixed descent. In her own words, I use the in-between world to comprehend my reality and create the belief that I know where I belong. It serves as my safe space and coping mechanism for the mental fractures endured. I Am Motherland is about how I ground myself. It is an entity I carry within, where I find my sense of mother. This world is deeply rooted in representational power and symbolic me.
የፀሐይ ጨረርታ በመሬት ማህፀን እንደሚዘልቀው ሁሉ ቋንቋው ጠፍቶ ነበር። አዲስ ቋንቋ ተወለደ። ሶስተኛ ዓለም ተፈጠረ። ደረቁ መሬት ወደ ውሃ ሲለወጥ ውሃዎች ህይወትን አስመልክተው ንጽህናና የዳግም መወለድ ችሎታ እንዲያስተምሩ ተዋቸው። ደረቁ መሬቶች ኃይል እንደተሰጡ ያንተ ጉብዝናና ችሎታ እንደ የድሮ አባቶች ያንጸባርቃሉ። መሬት እንደጠበቀ ትጀምራለህ። እንደ እናት አይን ንጹህ የሆነ በጉዞ ውስጥ እጅህን ይዤ ከኔ ጋር እንደጀመረ እጓዛለሁ። የብረት ስብርባሮች እንደሚደንሱና ቋንቋ ሲጓዙ እንቅስቃሴያቸውን እየተከታተሉ ሲጓዙ የአራህና አሸብ መዝጊያ ቤቶች ይደርሳሉ። እየራቅህ የምትሄድ ቁልፍ ነው። ሰይፎች አሻቅበው ሲነሱ እዛ ላሉ ሲቆምላቸው እኛ ርቀን እንደዚህ ስንጓዝ ወደ ቤት የሚመጣው ነገር ለማጥራት መንፈስን ለመጠየቅ ዝግጁ ከሆንክ ያንተ ነጸብራቅን ያንቺን ነገር አንበሶች ሲዋኙ ትማራለህ። የአካሎቻቸው ክፍል ያገኙታል። በአፋፍ ላይ እንዲገኙ ዝግጁ ናቸው።
Tell me where do I belong? Neither here or there, in the middle of it all. Maybe everywhere. Tell me where do I belong? Neither here or there, in the middle of it all. Maybe everywhere. This illusion of belonging. The physical don't mean nothing. I'm carrying my ancestors with me. I ain't bluffing. I'm buzzing. King, I am motherland. Tender and I'm loving. I am not my vessel. I am under and above. I am where I need to be whenever the jig is up. I am not what I do and I am not my thoughts. So unless success is what I'm thinking of, in the middle of it all, know that you are legacy. You rise and then you fall. I am my own entity. I'm moving and dancing, slowly advancing, asking the questions and finding the answers. Yeah. And if the answers ain't true, then it's back upon road. Put the press and doubles back. No head on the swivel in the in between the worlds. I can send you my location, but it won't be where I'm at. Tell me where do I belong? Neither here or there, in the middle of it all. Maybe everywhere. Tell me where do I belong? Neither here or there, in the middle of it all. Maybe I set foot, I found my purpose, but not in the textbook, you know me. Soul searching in the world of phonies can get lonely. I found my people, I'm happy, I'm not the only. Somewhere in the middle, I decide where I belong. I won't let nobody tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. King, I am motherland, royal in the flesh. My generation trying to clean after your mess. When lions become swimmers, you find a world in between. There you can see what it's been doing to me. I can't compare it to nothing I've ever seen, except maybe the sceneries of my dreams. Just me and myself. I love it. I care about me and my health. I love it. I'm doing what's good for my soul. I love it. I'm doing it all cause you know I love it. Just me and myself. I love it. I care about me and my health. I love it. I'm doing what's good for my soul. I love it. I'm doing it all cause you know I love it. Just me and myself. I love it. I care about me and my health. I love it. I'm doing what's good for my soul. I love it. I'm doing it all cause you know I love it.
እዚህ ላይ ካንተ አስቀድሞ የተጓዘበት መንገድ ለማግኘት ትችላለህ። መጪው ህይወት በፊት እየተጓዘ ይህ ሲጀምር በእግራችን ሲሆን መሬቱን ምልክት እያደረግንበት ነበር። ግንኙነት የተለያዩ ታሪኮች መጪውን ህይወት ይሆናሉ። አንድ ቀን ራስህ ከማንኛውም በላይ ጠንካራ ሆኖ ታገኘዋለህ። ይኸውም ሁሉ ነገር አንድ መሬት መሆኑ ስታውቅ ነው። የደረቁ መሬት ልጅ ወደ ለስላሳው መሬት ሲመለስ ያንተ ስር መሰረትና ያንተ ታሪክ እንደገና ይወለዳል። አንተ የኔ ውርሻ ነህ፣ አንተ የኔ ቅርስ ነህ፣ አንተ የኔ ስጦታ ነህ።
I would like to invite us to take a 5-minute break, Angela. Great. 5-minute break, just to kind of take it all in, have a comfort break, do what you need to do so that we can come back and have a discussion, which I am very sure will be no doubt stimulating. And we will also watch episode 2 of Paloma's documentary series before we get into the conversation. I think we now have a version with subtitles. So I will see you back here at 16 past the hour. Welcome back, everyone. I'm assuming we're all back. I'm just going to get started. We have our second video from the series on underrepresented Black creators in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I'm going to share my screen now. Here we go.
Trabalhei com assessoria política durante 15 anos e faz 2 anos, exatamente, que eu falei chega, e foi que eu lancei um blog, que é crisguterres.com.br, que é um blog que fala de tudo, de lifestyle, mas principalmente um protagonismo negro, que é o que eu gosto na moda. Essa moda que é a moda afro-brasileira e também é a moda que negros buscam e formam para si mesmo, né? A gente já produzia nossas roupas, nossa vestimenta, desde a época das senzalas. Isso tudo tem que ser, tem que entrar historicamente. Acho legal das pessoas também pensarem o que vem primeiro, é a moda ou a identidade? Quando a moda vem na frente do afro, a gente desconstrói muito da nossa identidade, né? De repente é afromoda brasileira. Se nós não somos aceitos lá, nós vamos fazer o nosso evento. É claro, a gente tem muita dificuldade porque a gente precisa de dinheiro. Então, vale a gente fazer por nós mesmos, mas a gente precisa de investimento. E esses investimentos não estão nas nossas mãos, porque a gente sabe, o dinheiro não está com a gente.
Dentro do mercado da moda, eu acho que as visões voltada para a moda afro-brasileira, ela ainda é um pouco complexa. Assim. As pessoas às vezes me chamam para dar uma palestra, mas com aquele intuito assim, moda inclusiva. Não entende que aquilo é um segmento de moda existente, assim. Então não é porque é uma moda afro-brasileira que ela tem que ser inclusiva, assim. Ficou bonito dizer que está incluindo o negro na moda, né? Então é como se a gente não fizesse parte dela. Infelizmente, a gente está precisando desse rótulo para atravessar barreiras, né? Para poder estar em eventos como São Paulo Fashion Week, fui dar uma palestra e o rótulo era basicamente isso. Assim. Então, a gente precisa ainda desse pequeno rótulo para ultrapassar grandes barreiras ainda dentro do cenário da moda.
Do mercado negro, mercado afro, eu já vejo ele de uma forma diferente. Acho que ele é um mercado que ele se criou de maneira orgânica, mas por necessidade. Uma necessidade de haver muitas pessoas, formadas ou não, que não conseguiram, a experiência de pessoas que eu conheço, que não conseguiram ingressar dentro do mercado da moda geral, e aí sentiu a necessidade ou a oportunidade de fazer um negócio próprio. Então acho que é um momento muito recente disso, da gente conseguir identificar o mercado negro ativo e de geração de renda, que é um mercado que circula muito dinheiro, só que não é um dinheiro que ele circula na nossa mão. Existe uma pesquisa que fala que o dinheiro gira na mão do branco 17 vezes. E o dinheiro gira na mão do negro 3 vezes apenas. Então, é um mercado que ele ainda não entendeu o poder que ele tem. Eu acho que ao mesmo tempo o mercado em geral não quer essa potência.
Acontecem várias cenas lá, várias paradas de workshop, de palestra, disso e aquilo, sabe? Fomentando mesmo essa questão dos estudantes. Até hoje, em 4 semestres, eu nunca vi, exceto uma vez, que foi a Thaís Araújo, que foi fazer uma fala lá na faculdade, mas eu nunca vi nenhuma pessoa preta me representando lá, dando palestra, falando que, mano, eu estudei, e é assim, e é isso, e vamos lá. Não tem. Eu quero que meus filhos, meus netos, meus bisnetos, talvez eu não vá estar aqui, não esteja aqui nesse plano para ver as coisas acontecendo, né? A faculdade em si mudando, mas de dentro para fora, não de fora para dentro. Porque de fora para dentro, na verdade, não acontece essa mudança, porque as pessoas ainda assim acreditam que ali não é o nosso lugar, e ali é o nosso lugar sim, porque tijolinho por tijolinho daquela parada ali, eu tenho certeza que tem um pouquinho de sangue preto. Eu acho que, em primeiro lugar, assim, representatividade. É uma palavra que a gente tem que bater até chegar do outro lado.
Dentro da minha casa, a minha avó e a minha tia, elas tinham assinatura de uma revista chamada Gloss, que é uma revista falecida, que pouca gente conhece. E nunca tinha pessoas, tinha muito pouca gente nele, quando tinha era uma coisa básica, sabe? E em torno disso eu comecei a querer ver mais pessoas negras, pessoas de pele escura, trabalhando, fotografando. E eu comecei a trabalhar em cima do coletivo AM com isso, para poder fotografar pessoas negras, reproduzir nelas o que eu queria ver, que eu não via na mídia, na televisão, em revistas. Poder mostrar um pouco de mim nessas pessoas, ou trazer oportunidades de pessoas negras que às vezes não acreditam em si. Por exemplo, a maioria das pessoas que a gente convida, elas não acreditam. Tipo, elas falam, tipo, eu topo, mas eu não sei se vai ficar legal as fotos, porque eu não sei fotografar, eu não me acho bonita e afins assado. O coletivo AM eu uso ele como ferramenta mesmo para mostrar para essas pessoas negras que às vezes não acreditam em si, que não se confiam, que não se acham bonitas, para fazer fotos editoriais para elas verem que elas são bonitas, sim, e que pode fazer o que elas quiserem, que editoriais de qualquer forma, seja lá o contexto dele, elas vão ficar incríveis, sabe?
Quando eu estava completando 21 anos, eu conheci uma agência especializada em modelos negros, fiz um curso, e além do curso de passarela e fotografia, que é voltado para a área da moda, teve todo um processo de autoaceitação, de autoestima, de valorização da cultura negra, de como eu me entendi enquanto mulher negra. Foi uma experiência muito boa, uma experiência que eu levo até hoje, que fez eu enxergar muitas coisas que eu não enxergava. A área da moda é uma área muito extensa e é uma área que você consegue trabalhar de diversas formas. Mas eu ainda vejo muita dificuldade em relação à inserção das modelos negras e dos modelos negros. Eu quero estar lá, eu quero que meu rosto seja visto, mas eu quero ver outras meninas, eu quero ver outras pessoas, não somente eu, porque eu acredito que quando você abre as portas de algum lugar, você não quer ficar sozinho. Eu, pelo menos, penso assim, eu não quero ficar sozinha, ter aquela síndrome de único modelo negro que trabalha. Não, eu quero que outras meninas me vejam e saibam que elas podem trabalhar nessa área, que elas podem ser modelos, que elas podem ser médicas, que elas podem ser advogadas, o que elas quiserem, independente do que as pessoas têm falado.
Fantastic. I think before I open the floor to questions, I think the wonderful thing about all of these films, you know, as I get to watch them again and reflect on them, is that they teach me a little bit more about decoloniality, you know, which is this kind of big, wide word that we use. But in so many ways, these films kind of show me that decoloniality is really just this process of like visibility and identity and curiosity and the deliberate kind of integration of all the versions of self into our work, and that, you know, that can change from day to day. And it's really just an exploration. It's a conversation with self, with others, with our environments around, you know, what we want to see and how we want to express that through the things that we make, which is equal parts scary and exciting because we don't know where that will go. So I'd like to invite all of you to please turn on your cameras. Let's have a conversation. Let's keep it light. I did say I don't enjoy the sound of my own voice, so now it's time to hear everybody else's. I'm going to start with the wonderful people who have shared the films with us today. We have Paloma, Gervasio, Botelho from Sao Paulo, Brazil. We have Lesiba, Mabitsela. We have Julian, Kubel. We have Sonya Battla, and we have Branko Propovic. I hope I haven't butchered all your names. And I think I'd like you all to answer one question first, and then we'll kind of, you know, go into all the others. The question is, firstly, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work, and then what does decoloniality mean to you and how is it expressed through your work? So I would like to start with Sonya.
Hello, I'm Sonya and I live in Pakistan. And I've been working in fashion for nearly 20 years. And only recently have I been conscious of having to decolonize fashion and why geography matters so much. And I'm into revivalist textiles, as you saw in the video. It's mostly experiment, and some experiments go right and some don't. I also realized that the people who make the garments that I can later, or make the textiles that I can later fashion as garments, are key players in the conversation, and they may not be here talking to you, but it is important to recognize them. And so I think that's why I like this video. I hate myself in it, but I think it was important because they were talking about themselves with dignity, because often weaving and hand weaving is looked upon as a downtrodden profession in our part of the world because it's not lucrative. But money is not everything, and that is what decoloniality means to me, to be inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now hand over to Lesiba. Tell us about yourself, what decoloniality means to you, and how it's expressed through your work.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Mabitsela. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and a fashion designer. Yeah, and I guess for a long time I've been integrating this idea of using clothing as a medium to kind of communicate, I guess, certain sort of misconceptions about what African design kind of looks like. But I'm currently more preoccupied with the idea of how genealogies kind of travel between this idea of, you know, pre-colonial Africa and how it could be kind of seen today. And these are seen in the nuances, such as things that are not necessarily present within the study of African fashion. Obviously, African fashion is more based on colors and prints, but my departure kind of started off with this idea of silhouette and how silhouette could be used as an alternative aesthetic sort of tool to kind of study or link together African aesthetics, and not only across the continent, but also in diaspora. So I think maybe that's in some ways kind of speaks to what decoloniality means to me, is a spiritual connection that doesn't necessarily, or is not necessarily, or cannot necessarily be contextualized only in the spaces of academia. And so it's a practice-based sort of inquiry as well.
Thank you. Paloma, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you for the invite. Thank you so much to appreciate and truth in my work. And congratulations for everybody for the zine. Is amazing. Are you ready? And share? It's desafio. I forgot the word in English.
I may help you. We can figure out together. So she says it was a challenge. So I can help you with the translation. So let's go.
To speak in English because it's a long time and then I don't talk in English, don't presentation in English. But I'm an activist in fashion, and I talk about, my work is about Afro-Brazilian fashion, like everybody see in the documentary. And I create another project about this. So I believe that it's very important for us Brazilian people, Black people, to have the recognize about our work, our clothes, our ideas, our knowledgement, and about everything that we do. And the fashion market in general is totally appropriated about our culture, Afro culture in general, but I'm talking about Afro-Brazilian culture. So for me, it's very important and very powerful. We do and create our spaces, our like newsletter, like communications, different kinds of communication and different kinds of marketing. And I believe that probably I'm not answering the question, but is everything that I think about coloniality and decoloniality. And I think it's very important, Afrocentrated, okay? This idea, because of the racism, because of the difficulty you have to stay together during our working, and to access the workings, access the space of studies and everything like that. So I have this documentary, I have Negros Diálogos de Moda nas Ruas de São Paulo. Please me.
Now
the
she's saying that she
translation.
has this work about the Black people in the fashion industry, but she also has another work on it's
in the
actually
zine.
yes, actually they have work that is in the zine about also about Black Brazilians in fashion. Okay, what else?
Yes.
So now we may continue.
Yes, and a community integrating personal stylists, Black personal stylists here too, because I'm personal stylist too. And I don't remember the word again, but nowadays, a few, just 1 month, I'm a coordinator of committee, racial committee in fashion revolution here in Brazil. So it's a long journey, a mission in my life that to express, to expand, and invite Black people and not Black people to appreciate the Afro-Brazilian fashion. It's like that. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Paloma. Thank you. Branko, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Well, it was wonderful to see all the other films as well. Thank you for sharing that. I just side note, so I'm not the maker of the film. I'm, let's say, the producer. I helped Kalkidan with our organization to make the film happen. With Fashion Clash, that's what we do. We try to give a platform to young designers to show their work. But I would say most importantly is because there is so much already in the world. There is so many products, so many things are being overproduced, but we don't need more products. We need more stories that do justice to people and new narratives. And I think that's what Kalkidan did very well. I'm so proud of how she managed to do that with her film. I mean, we absolutely gave her total freedom of expression. That's what we do to all the designers, but it's beautiful how she managed to, as she said in her own words, to create a third world, as is saying like, I don't know where I belong, but I can make a new world. And in this world, I can visualize how my home looks like. And I found it so beautiful. And I can imagine that there are so many people in the world that feel displaced for some reason. And me, myself, being also I came from Croatia to the Netherlands and also feel in between. And then I felt inspired by her doing that. So I think it's important that we give platform to these kind of makers. And then coming to decoloniality, what it means to me is I would say it's a process of learning. It's kind of, I have a really hate and love relationship with fashion. I always had that. And I was always interested in history and learning about, try to understand what it actually is. And by joining these conversations, I feel that there is a whole world opening that I haven't learned yet and can help me, let's say, revalue again why in the first place I was working in fashion. Sometimes it makes it difficult sometimes to continue to proceed in this business. It's been now for almost 20 years and try to remind myself, oh, why was I doing this? And so once in a while you need to, you need to surround yourselves with people that will open your eyes, because it's easy, easily you become an institution because people kind of, is this person from this organization? And so I also kind of decolonize my own practice, let's say. Yeah, so I think, and it was, it's beautiful to see, to really see stories from all over the world. And I think that's what I mean with our little organization. That's what we try to bring into the Netherlands, to show diversity of stories, basically, not so much of craft, because we believe that a lot of people already have their talent, but it's also showing the stories behind it.
Thank you. And Julian, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for having me and being able to show the film. Yeah, my name is Julian. I run a South African streetwear label called Butan, and my film, or our film, was The Searching for Mother and Child. And maybe I can tell you a bit about our brand. The brand name is actually an anagram of the word Bantu. Abantu is the Zulu word for people. And sadly, during the apartheid era in South Africa, the term Bantu was abused, like Bantu education and Bantustan. And what we've done, we've rearranged the letters to create an entirely new word. And what it means is that, we're also creating an entirely new outlook in the new South Africa. because that's reflective of the ethos of our brand, that we tap into a lot of lost cultural heritage and kind of remix it and put it into sort of a palatable format for the youth. And Khanyi, you put it very nicely. You said archiving the heritage, right? I think, and sort of like by, yeah, putting it into the digital age and putting it onto a garment to sort of making it, live on. And that's what we do. And I'll be honest with you, academically, I haven't really looked too much into decoloniality, but I guess that's the work that we're doing subconsciously, because we're changing the narrative, you know, through our clothing. I think traditionally, obviously, we're used to a very Western dominant narrative, also in fashion, and we're switching that up. You know, we're telling African stories, and we are making, I think also we're bringing an element of pride back, because I mean, if we look at the damage that colonialism has done, I think the biggest damage is that it stripped people of their pride, of their culture, and we're kind of reversing that process. And it's been a beautiful journey. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Again, if anyone else has questions, please drop them into, well, please drop the word question into the chat and then ask the question by unmuting yourself. My first question is for Sonya. Your film kind of serves as a message to, you know, to those who will be making in the future, to kind of take what exists and let it live on. What does it practically look like for young people to take this art on? You know, are there places where people can learn? Like, you know, I think it's quite a logistically heavy kind of task, you know, to take on when you're weaving and, you know, and having access to those spaces. What does that look like? Is there access that is available? How, you know, of course, your film is doing the work of getting people to know that this exists and it's an art form that they should be learning, but what does it practically look like?
I'd like to start by introducing a little background. So the weavers are from East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And Pakistan and Bangladesh became two countries in 1971. These are refugees. These are a community that have not integrated in Pakistan. They have chosen to live separately in a secluded area on the outskirts of Karachi called Orangi. And that's where we had to go to film this. You may have noticed I was dressed differently because it's the outskirts of Karachi. Karachi is not a safe city. So you cover up and you go so that you fit into the community and you're not dismissed as an outsider who's just come in to you know, for a voyeuristic sort of view, and you're an insider and you want to blend in. And so I understood that these weavers are precious because their art has not carried into their children who are first generation Pakistanis, and they have integrated, whether some of them own mobile companies, some of them drive taxis, some of them have, or, you know, they work as retail staff, but they're not carrying on the work of their fathers. And you saw that there were one or two really young people, like they must be in their 40s, but nothing below that. And which is why I thought that we must work with them. And when I went in to work with them, I did not know what to expect. So that's why in the conversation, I'm just saying, let's just go with blue, because I really didn't know the dynamic. But we went in and we had a dyer with us, who's one of their community and could communicate. They speak Urdu in a Bengali Urdu way, and he could communicate. And so we just started dyeing, just experimenting. The first few pieces were not fast in color, so we couldn't sell them or wear them. And that's why the in-house, the girl who on my team, and we work together, she's wearing them and modeling it for the producer of the film. So it was it was an experiment in community awareness for me. That's how it started. And it was about the unknown. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we would make a collection out of it, and we were able to, and it was appreciated, and I was thankful for that. But really, when we started out, we had no idea where it was going to go. The only idea I had was, let's engage with a community that may be lost. And that you say it in a sentence, but it's a very heavy feeling that with this community, when it passes on, nobody will be doing this work, not in the level as these expert weavers. And they're really very, very talented. Their talent really needs to be brought to the world. And the one, I discontinued this because I could not keep investing in the looms. It was very far. Logistically, it was very difficult to do. So we made a couple of collections, and then there was the COVID break. So I'm hoping to revive it now in a smaller way. But somebody from Australia wrote into me on Instagram saying, I saw this. Is it okay if I copy this? Because we have Indigenous weavers in Australia, and I think I can recreate this project, but I just wanted your permission. And I was so psyched. I said, yes, please take it forward. Because we tried to write to the government and say, this community can produce this craft. So if there is funding, if you can bring them together, I did it in a small way with about 7 weavers. You can do it with 70, 700. There are a lot of that community there. And unfortunately, people are not interested unless it's a very highly lucrative fashion product. In specialist products that are on the edges, which are experimental, a lot of people shy away from that. And I'm thankful to consumers who don't look for perfection. And I think that, to me, is decoloniality. When you're looking to wear a piece which is different, which is telling you its own story, which is not fitting in with the narrative of what is popular. And that's how it started, and that's where it is.
Thank you. And I think kind of carrying on from the pieces that tell a very different story and kind of subvert a narrative that you may or may not have known before. Lesiba, I think my next question is definitely for you. Your film kind of interrogates this performed compulsory masculinity that exists through, what has been identified as the 3-piece suit. And it made me think a lot about how traditionally, particularly Black South African men, didn't wear the 3-piece suit. In fact, more often than not, they were seen in, for lack of better term, skirts. And so of course, the process of coloniality kind of then turned masculinity into the 3-piece suit. And I think one of the most striking things was in this film is that, one, there were no men in the making of this film. And I suppose the question that I have for you is what do you believe are the effects of this kind of this colonial performance of masculinity in social and cultural spaces, particularly on Black men? How has, what does it mean for Black men now to kind of go into a very long and painful process of undoing and unlearning everything they know now? What are the effects of that? And how is it kind of manifesting in many ways? I hope I'm making sense.
It's actually quite interesting because it was just a situation that I was involved in this week. I won't divulge here, but it's really interesting, this idea of, well, I call this project the trauma that's caused by heartbreak. I don't know if that makes sense. And how we deal with that trauma, because it's I think colonialism was a trauma, and it's a robbing of an identity, right? But then when you think about what masculinities replaced, or rather this idea of a Victorian masculinity which came in and replaced existing notions of masculinity within the continent. There's also a level of trauma that comes with the Victorian idea of masculinity. And that idea is one that's not necessarily associated to that of the heart, and it's more about the idea of, you know, of the head, or rather the brain, the enlightened mind. And so I think that, you know, what comes with that trauma, the idea that, you know, men are not necessarily supposed to be emotional, they're not necessarily supposed to be in touch with this idea of emotional intelligence, vulnerability, fragility, and that kind of masculinity has now implanted or transplanted itself on, you know, a continent that by in large sort of, it's almost commonly known that it was a large area of the space was matriarchal. So, you know, there was a, you know, firstly, you have to kind of change the person to kind of see the existing power structures as, you know, now inferior. And how do you do that, you know? So there was a lot of trauma that I think, one, came with colonialism, but two, that comes with this idea of masculinity, that you can't be vulnerable, that you can't be soft, that you know, and I think that's what's, you know, when I think about gender-based violences today, I almost think about the traumas that were left, you know, undealt with, the ropes that have not been tied. And I guess in many ways, this film does speak to that, because it speaks to a system or a method of construction that was meant to oppress, you know, brown female bodies. At the same time, the suit represents the oppression of Black male bodies. And so that was where the connection came together, because it's, you know, the way I see the suit is that it's a construction. So if Black men were mostly used to wearing, you know, draped items of clothing or skirts, and now you kind of create this item that's very rigid, that kind of is an early form of plastic surgery or body dysmorphia in a way. It kind of resembles the idea of, you know, oppression. It's this idea of a jail, that you're kind of keeping, you're morphing a Black identity to a largely European, Beau Brummel type of tailored look. And so, yeah, I think that's where I'm thinking regarding this idea of masculinity and why this film was important, because then it kind of shows how man-made structures are implicit in this idea of trauma. And I guess it's interesting that you picked out that there was no necessarily a spotting of any male figures in that. It kind of was, you know, second nature, and as you highlighted it, made sense to me. But it was also a surprise to me in a weird way, if that makes sense, because I never thought about it in that way. But yeah, I think there's something interesting there. I could go deeper because it's it goes to this idea of Ma that I was also playing with. So it's a Japanese concept of space space essentially. But Issey Miyake kind of looked at the space between the body and cloth. And so when I think of the suit, the fact that it's constructed to, you know, if a body's used to this idea of drapery, it's used to the spiritual connection with the body. That means that there's more space between body and cloth. But then when you take that away, what are you taking away? There's a sense of spirituality that's being lost. So it's also tied to this spiritual idea or understanding of trauma that I'm kind of looking at as well.
Thank you. Yeah, the many, many layers of trauma can never be unpacked in a 30-minute session. But, you know, speaking of trauma, there's something in Paloma's film where somebody said, I just want to be frivolous. And I think it's, there's this kind of expected and designed exceptionalism that people of color kind of face, where you have to be extraordinary to be ordinary. So Paloma, I think what I love about your film is that, you know, that it's kind of, it's celebrating the moments in between extraordinary people, you know, kind of just sharing. They're not, you know, on the screen because they're over remarkable and they've like gone and won awards. They're just making and they're sharing their stories. So I'd like to hear from you. I think, what is the responsibility of the fashion industry to kind of open doors for creators of color, to allow them to be not unremarkable, but to kind of just make and explore in the way that I think their white counterparts are more allowed to experiment and learn and make mistakes and try again. You know, I think often the expectation is that you have to make a wild and big statement every time you make something. And sometimes you just want to try a few things and learn from them. So what is the industry's responsibility in changing that? And what are the steps can take to start making sure that we do better by young Black creatives?
Yes, there's a lot of responsibility, but I'm trying. I know that I'm trying. It's possible. It's a question, but I'm trying to propose something. I'm trying to try. I'm trying to try and to make it. I believe that I'm a part of this change, this movement. I'm not the all of that. There are a lot of other people, Black people, doing movements to change our future, our present and our future, not just in fashion market, but in a lot of different markets too. So it's a responsibility in thinking like that. You are touching in dreamings, touching in feelings, touching in experiencing expectations. Yeah, do you know? So I think it is it, and it's my feeling, is my expectative, is my dream too. Part of my intentions, but to reproduce for the collective, for the group, the community, the Black community. It's my desire.
Thank you. And my next question then, Branko, is for you. In storytelling and providing platforms for, you know, for designers and you know, people of color to kind of share their stories and allow their work to kind of be known. Do you think that there is a certain kind of aspect of exhaustion? Like, what does exhaustion look like when people are constantly having to be put on a platform to tell their story and hope that somebody listens and hears it? Like, what kind of, how do we, I suppose, what does it look like to showcase and spotlight creators, young creators, creators of color, etc., and make sure that they're creating safely, make sure that they're creating without exhaustion, without the labor of constantly having to do that work? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I know, like, I mean, it always starts from I always say, like, when you invite someone to come on board, let's say, and to say, okay, come, you can, we want to show your work, and it's a dialogue, because how we work, on one hand, we actively look for designers we want to show, because we believe that they should be given a platform, and on the other hand, it's we work with open call, and then it's always looking, okay, how you can manage between two, because it's also, at the end of the day, it's about facilitating, and it's also providing, I mean, also budget, for example, for example, in Kalkitan's case, we've worked with her in the past as well, and then now we said, oh, what would be interesting for her. She's part of a program that also has a coaching, and it's to see, okay, she already did really well with her work, and then so what is the next step in her development to be more, to, let's say, to have a more layered piece of work. What she did, so she's a jewelry designer, but she always said, I want to, with my work, I want it to be more than jewelry. I want to create that it's a platform for communities. But then we were talking with her about what's the best way to showcase this, and because otherwise she would have an exhibition, but this is, oh no, there is not so much layers that you can put into exhibition. And she was making visual work, moving images herself, let's say editing via Instagram, but then you know that, for example, saying in the Netherlands, people would put her away as, oh, this is an urban designer, because she uses, let's say, black models and kind of like urban kind of music, and then it's like, oh, it's an urban designer, but her work is actually more, it has a lot of layers. It's about symbolism and cultures and communities, and then so what we can help is help her to bring this narrative of her work to another, I wouldn't say level, but to showcase actually the versatility. And then fashion film, was the perfect medium for her. And in this film, I mean, she obviously, you can see that she showcases jewelry, but then at the same time, she also plays with generation of models. You know, she can put layers to it. There's even original music created. The film is totally shot in the Netherlands, and it's interesting because some of the locations actually are even in Maastricht. And it's so nice to see how she, almost through her eyes, what it means to be in the Netherlands, and because she's actually from here, nearby from Maastricht. And so she's just one of the examples where we managed to get, to have the funding and to find an additional producer so that she has budget. So it's when it comes to, when a lot of people of color in the Netherlands, I'm saying this because this is what I can mostly know from, is that obviously there's been, they are underrepresented. Even when you look at the Dutch fashion academies, there are rarely designers from different backgrounds graduating. And then I was like, how come? So where does it go wrong? How do they even, enter these schools? Why isn't there more? And then as a platform, I mean, we are not the only platform, but we said it's really important that we have a non-Western, let's say, participants list, that people can see different kinds of stories. So they're and that when they are part of it, that they feel fully, there's no restriction. They can really do whatever they want. So by giving someone a platform, you always say, okay, but I already trust you, whatever you do. There is no failure. There is no, you can really experiment. And that is something we offer to everyone that is part of the program. And and I think, and now already, I mean, this film is being picked up already, and it's going to New York, and we are going to send it to several other festivals. And she also felt like, oh, it's so great that now I have this film and I don't have to make new work the coming months, because as a designer, you kind of feel the pressure, I have to produce new products, and that's not necessary. I mean, now she can go to the next step. And last year we had a similar, we had a designer, Dutch designer, there was origin in Suriname, And he made also a story. It was about, he explores masculinity and how Black men can play with being masculine, but at the same time also totally engage with fashion and adornment, and what that means in the country where he's from, and then blended crafts from Suriname. And then what also he made also a film. It was a fantastic film, and that feels so great. That actually all this kind of started through COVID, that because we are not allowed to kind of physically showcase work, that we said, okay, but let's then put all the budgets and everything into filmmaking, and it turned out really well. And now this can actually travel the globe. I don't know if this answers the question, but I more try to see how we try to really put ourselves into the minds of the designers, and that it helps a little bit that my whole team, so I'm a fashion designer, I have a background in fashion design, and the whole of the team as well. So we understand what a designer needs in their practice, and we try to, to have this kind of conversation, and also to not be as an institution for them. So we always say we do this together, so we are partners. We can just help you with something that you cannot have, because we have, let's say, easier ways to get the money or to get, but that's how you can really make a difference by using your position in a good way, let's say.
Thank you so much. And my final question is for Julian. Thank you everyone who's still up at this time, if it is late for you. So Butan Bandu does the work of kind of combining this love that we all have for street culture with our cultures and our identities. I'd love to know, 5 years from now, like what is the story that we are telling about ourselves through street culture? What is the story of our cultures and identities that we've kind of taken with us and reimagined through street culture?
Right. So street culture, I think, is just the medium that we use. I think it's a medium that especially is receptive for the youth. And in essence, I must actually say, like, what the brand started as was mainly celebrating street culture, but it's evolved to actually celebrating culture as a whole, and more particular South African and even African culture and that of the diaspora. And I mean, that really is what we do. So we look at various stories, this one obviously being one of them, but there are others. An example of the diaspora, for instance, we spoke about the Black Star Line. I don't know if you're familiar with Marcus Garvey and the Black Star Line. It was the first Black-owned shipping line. And one amazing thing it did is that it took freed slaves from the Americas back to Africa. And we looked at that story and turned it into a fashion collection and used that as a medium to tell that story. And there are many more narratives that we are talking about and that we will talk about in the future. And yeah, look, I think it's a wide spectrum. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's celebrating stories of individuals that have done something for their people. It is celebrating cultural heritage, making sure that certain traditional garments sort of aren't being lost. So that's a strong narrative that we keep telling. And look, hopefully, because I think you're asking me overarchingly, what are the stories we're going to be telling? I hope that we're going to tell a story of a victorious Africa, a Africa that actually manages to be celebrated and seen. Because I think, from the West, Africa is never really taken seriously, I mean, even if you look at arts, in Europe, you talk about the various epochs and you talk about, various art forms from the past. And then when you look at Africa, or when the West looks at Africa, everything is just sort of like ethnic art. You know, it's just one thing. And I hope that we will break that narrative and that we are finally seen and celebrated. Yeah, I think that will be our journey. To be honest, I can't tell you where we will be as a clothing brand and what type of narratives we will be talking about in the next 5 years, but I hope that we will make some inroads also in the West, because currently we're only selling in Southern Africa. But we are getting interest from Europe and especially America. America is interesting because obviously of the diaspora. And yes, I hope that we will be seen as a brand and that African stories will be seen in the West and also celebrated. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And before I close out the session, does anyone else have any questions that they would like to add?
I think, you know, there's not enough time to address all the questions, at least for me, that I have. So therefore, I just want to take this space to express my gratitude to everybody for not only sharing these amazing works with us, but also I think especially the amazing stories that these movies, that these film clips tell. And if I have learned anything from this evening, at least for me, for this evening, is I do think I agree, I think with Branko, who said that the movie, the medium of movie is such a powerful tool, I think, to bring so much more layers into the storytelling through fashion. I don't have a background in fashion. I'm an anthropologist myself. And I have always had quite a difficulty in understanding what fashion actually is, or how it works, or its dynamics. But I think this evening, through these works, it opened a whole new universe for me, how to actually interact with fashion and understand fashion in a meaningful way, where you can really communicate stories. So yeah, again, I just really want to thank everyone for making your work, sharing your work, talking about your work, and I can only ask you to please continue doing it. So thank you so very, very much for being here tonight, for sharing this, and hopefully for keeping the conversation going. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, well, that leads us to the end of our session. Thank you for these conversations. None of these conversations are over. We barely scraped the surface, but it was great to just kind of touch on some of them. And I think, you know, maybe we'll have another one soon. Angela, looking at you.
Na realidade, essas moedas estão equilibradas umas nas outras. E é muito louco como alguém conseguiu fazer isso. Bots que vão confundir somente.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what that interlude was, but it sounded like Brazilian TV.
It's a great outro for me. I mean, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Have a good one.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.